we talked about the theory and we talked about some of those elements to keep in mind when you're pitching. But what's important is that you understand when you have all of those bits together, you know, how does that look from an investor's perspective when it comes to startups pitching to them? And I think beyond Bill's experience in SOSV, you just have a wealth of experience supporting startups, which is really good. So, but you want to give a quick introduction to the room and just let them know some of your background, like where your passion for startups and supporting startups has kind of come from.
Well, I've started multiple global startups myself as a co-founder. Two of them reached billion-dollar plus valuations. Three of them have made global impact as charities and social enterprises. One has a cure for heart disease. One has 106 million trees growing. And one is the largest network of clubs for kids to learn to code for free in the world. So I've done a bit. And then on top of that, through SOSV, we've got 900 plus active portfolio companies. So I've gotten to see more pitches than most.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And look, I think what's really good as well is again, like A, because your background, it stems across so many different spheres, sectors. Like I know some people in this call are approaching this kind of pitching masterclass from that social enterprise point of view. And equally, we even saw in the chat earlier in the session, people talking about maybe the difficulty of effective communication in that deep tech biotech space, which I think is something that you can kind of really lend support to. But could you describe a bit more maybe about SOSV and maybe, you know, that kind of process or those kind of interactions you have with startups?
We run the world's leading deep tech accelerator programs, Hacks for hardware and IndieBio for biotech. Those programs are residential, 3 to 6 months long. At the end of it, there is a demo day. At those demo days, we typically have upwards of $100 billion worth of investor AUM sitting in that room. And so when people go to pitch, they really need to have it right because it's their big moment. And we have a very high success rate. 2/3 of our companies get to Series A. So we're doing something right. And
Yeah.
this is all in deep tech, which is traditionally the hardest thing to fund.
Yeah. Because look, I think that's one thing that I actually do want to kind of again kind of staying on this topic, I suppose, when it comes to an effective pitch. Like I think a lot of today's session we discussed kind of again like the hero's journey and a lot of maybe the examples would have been your typical B2B SaaS, but can you maybe describe how does effective communication look in a solution or you know a startup that maybe isn't as digestible as your typical kind of B2B SaaS solution?
Actually, effective communication looks the same for everything.
Yeah.
It starts with there is no such thing as a finished pitch deck. And in fact, you can't have a single pitch deck. You need a deck that is a teaser that says something interesting enough that people will request a meeting with you or people will get you the meeting. And that teaser deck needs to be customized to your audience. Different investors invest in different stuff. And so if your teaser isn't customized to what they're interested in, that's just spam. And then when you're actually pitching, if you've got more than 5 slides, you're doing it wrong. And the hero's journey is super important. And yet I see time and time again this ridiculous format of here's the problem, here's the answer. That's like saying in Star Wars, oh, the Empire is evil and they killed Luke's parents. And the next slide is, and Luke is going to blow up the Death Star. What a terrible story. They
Yeah.
say that invest in the entrepreneur. That's bullshit. Invest in the entrepreneur plus one at least. Because if you can't convince at least one other human to believe in your vision, that is a terrible signal to investors. So it's always invest in the team. And yet the team slide is almost always a freaking afterthought, which is insane. And nothing says team like 7 individual LinkedIn profile photos photoshopped together on a page. Actually go and get a picture of you and your team members, I don't know, jumping off a cliff together or getting ice cream or playing soccer or doing anything but standing there looking dumbstruck as somebody takes your LinkedIn picture. You need to have the problem articulated beautifully and in a surprising way. You need to then articulate your stature, how it is that you get to say that this is important. Like when we were first pitching Coder Dojo, not for money, but just to get free premises, and we got to 127 countries, physical locations, 127 countries without even opening a bank account, just on the strength of the pitch. When we went to pitch Coder Dojo, we would say, listen, as an investor, I see too many startups without coders. That's like asking to start up a whole bunch of restaurants without chefs. You know, this idea that you outsource something beautiful to McDonald's is not going to work. And people go, nod their heads sagely, yeah, that is a problem. And then I'd say, and we searched the world, James and I, looking for a solution to this problem. And we started prototyping it. And we actually came up with a format that can be run completely for free that has kids learning to create great code in a matter of a year or two, which is a lot faster than most people think it can be done, especially if you went to college. And then we say, and this answer is called Coder Dojo. So we talk about the credibility, we talk about each other, celebrate what is the most amazing thing that your team member knows how to do. If it's deep tech, this is the point at which people want reassurance that there's somebody with a PhD or two in the team. That's going to give you more credibility than trying to explain what your technology does. And then, and only then, do you talk about the answer, the solution. And then, and only then, do you talk about how you monetize. And then, and only then, do you show that you're not just taking an incredibly razor-thin slice of an incredibly tiny vertical, which is what really worries VCs and other investors, that you're taking such a small slice of a market that you won't be able to defend it. And that has to be communicated in 5 slides and a lot of talking. Now, before you even pitch, like if you're going to a pitch competition, if you're not working the room beforehand, you're insane. Like the people that you meet, you want them listening, you want them to like you. And the fastest way to do that is to be relatable. How do you be relatable? So Andy, where do you live?
Get Cork.
You're a Cork boy. I love Cork. And tell me, what brought you to this NDRC world? What are you passionate about?
Oh, well, I'm passionate about understanding what I suppose the next big thing is. I want to see it.
Yeah, I'm exactly passionate about that same thing. 2 questions, 2 related answers that are authentically true. You do that and you get related to somebody. You do that to a lot of people in the audience, especially judges, before you ever go up. They're going to be wanting to know what you're going to say on stage. If you don't work the room like an absolute mad thing before the pitches start, you have already lost. Doesn't matter how good your deck is. And relatability is literally 2 questions and relate it to your own life and show some passion for whatever that is. Yeah, authentically.
And also, like Bill, just on that one, like, and this is something I tell a lot of founders whenever there is those kind of showcase, days or elements where you're pitching on stage. Like sometimes what I am fearful of is, again, it's kind of founders that think the pitch is the 3 minutes of sharing the deck and whatnot, but this kind of plays into the idea that you're always pitching when you're in that room. As long as you're in the room, you're pitching, and
well, you're setting up for your pitch. Like they're different. Like you don't be the person who only pitches over and over and over. Like be relatable. That is different, right? If you walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I got this great new thing," you're not relatable. If you come up to someone and say, hey, how did you come to be here? And what are you passionate about? And then relate that to your life, in 30 seconds, you can have done two questions like that and be saying, oh, I'm actually here to pitch. So do watch out for me. And then I see somebody else I've got to go and talk to. And then you just do that to the whole room.
Yeah.
Go one after the other. Like I could work a whole room in like 10 minutes if I do it really fast. And people end up remembering who I am, mostly because of the hat. And they know that I'm a relatable guy. And I am authentically passionate about so many things that it's actually easy to be relatable to. You should be
Yeah.
easily relatable to. A lot of
Yeah.
people think that pitching is somehow winning an argument because we're trained in school to win debates. No, it's not. Pitching is about creating the most relatable, emotionally connected presence for your great thing that you're doing that you possibly can in your audience. One of the other big mistakes I see people make, other than problem solution, is they put a slide up and they use the slide to prompt them to say what it is they're going to say. That is insane. If you are the CEO and it is your true passion, you freaking know what to say because you've been living it. So don't wait for the slide. Say it and then put up a slide that makes your point even better.
Yeah. And look,
For
that's
Coda
something that,
Dojo, I put up a slide. I'd say, and we figured out this way to get kids to, for free, come together. And really, it's a great learning environment. And then I'd show a slide of all these kids absolutely cracking on with big smiles in a room that was friendly to make my point, not to prompt me to remind me what to say. Right? You need to know this because you're living it. And the second you look like you're reading from the slide, you've broken contact with the audience and you make yourself look like you don't know what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah. No, look, 100%. And I tell people that as well. It's don't not relying on the support screens that might be offered to you, for example, because like what you're saying makes complete sense. And from a VC perspective, like again, like what do you think, particularly I suppose when people are actually approaching you for investment, like what are you looking out for in particular? Now I know we kind of touched on them, but could you dive a bit more detail on that as
I'll
well?
tell you what I'm looking out for in particular. The first thing I'm looking out for is that they took the time to understand what we do. Like they read our website, they talked to some of the other founders who've been through the program, they've networked on LinkedIn to other investments we've made, and they found out they've done the research. And then they connect me because somebody has introduced them. Like a former founder or somebody that we know that knows what we do has cared enough and believed enough to say, hey, Bill, you might want to have a chat to these folks. Not another investor, preferably, but actually one of the people we worked with. And then they sent me a teaser deck that shows me that they're working on a problem and that they've got a bit of a clue how to work on it. And they'd love to share a bit more. And then they show me that they have some passion, that they can communicate it, that they have a team of more than one believer, that they are good with their money, that they've actually managed to scrape together enough somehow to get their prototype or to get to a place where they can justify the next raise, that they have, some financial acumen, and then that they have a desire, a purpose to really shift that problem in the world at scale, and that shifting that problem at scale is going to make them highly profitable and within a time frame that is sane.
Yeah.
I co-founded and built Zing. We were cash flow positive in 90 days. 90 days. And I was the only investor. I was very pleased with that investment. I was also the co-founder. It is possible to do. Like Coda Dojo, hundreds of locations in under a year, didn't even open a bank account. You can have enormous impact without spending a lot of cash. That's a really good sign to an investor. We have people who we have companies that are getting through clinical trials in under 10 million of investment. Clinical trials are the most expensive thing in the world. They've figured out cheap ways to do it. That's the sort of thing that excites you
Yeah.
and that it's relevant, right? If you
Yeah.
do not have relevance, don't talk to the VC. It's not worth your or their time.
Yeah, and I feel like some people as well, like they're trying to save, 5 minutes on an introduction by doing that cold template that they use for each VC, and even just giving it that extra bit of time just to get some context as to why someone's reaching out. Like it's absolutely crucial. Um, Look, what I'm going to do now, because
It's also
I'm
about
conscious
being
that
relatable too, because if you don't
yes,
know anything about the investor, how can you be relatable?
yeah, no, that's exactly it.
And
So look,
investors don't invest in people they don't like, and they don't like people who argue with them.